Cinderella story, out of nowhere, a former greenskeeper now about to become the Masters champion. It looks like I'm a wreck. It's in the hole!
Tell them to go out there with all they got and win just one for the Gipper.
We have who's on first, what's on second, I don't know's on third.
Life is a banquet, and most poor suckers are starving to death.
It's the Al Travis Show. Love having our next guest on. He's the president of the American Experiment, John Hinderaker. John, thanks for being here.
Always great to be with you, Al.
I want to do some real quick kissing up, if I can, because you come on a lot, and I know more about your probably organization than any, and it's like business. You know, there are others that do kind of what you do, but no one does as much as you do. And here's what I mean. Didn't you just get off like a 40-city tour of Minnesota discussing what's going on? Now the state fair comes up, and you guys are back out to the fair, and that's just like side hustles for your people. They're writing all this stuff. They're figuring all this stuff out. Are you the meanest boss in America? Oh, by the way, it's your week to be at the fair all week, and like it's 1,000 degrees. You guys are always doing something.
Let me answer that last question first. I'm not the meanest boss in America, but I may have the best staff in America.
Okay.
And you know, I talk to presidents, CEOs of policy organizations around the country. We have a convention of policy organizations coming up next week down in New Orleans. And they're amazed at the stuff that we do. We are the most activist policy organization in the country. And as you say, we just finished up our annual summer tour. We didn't do 40 events on Minnesota's budget. It was closer to 20, but we do a lot. And they're all over the state. You know, they're all over the state. It's not just in the Twin Cities metro. We're, half of them at least are in greater Minnesota. And yeah, we love to go to the state fair. I mean, the state fair is where people come from all over Minnesota, people from all walks of life. You know, everybody goes to the fair. And we have a booth. Well, one of these days, if we can do it, we're going to try to have a booth every day at the fair. It's hard to do that, though, in a location as good as the one that we've currently got. So what we've been doing the last few years is just one day at the state fair. And that day this year is Saturday. So we're going to have a booth at the state fair on Saturday. We'll man that booth all day long from 8 till 5. We're just south of the grandstand. So if you walk by the grandstand, you know, as 100,000 people will do probably that day, if you just walk a few steps to the south away from the grandstand, you'll very quickly see our booth. And we have a wheel that you can spin to win free merchandise. And there's a line of people lined up to spin the wheel all day long. There are people waiting for us to open the booth in the morning so they can spin the wheel. You could win an American Experiment T-shirt or corn cob holders. We have the world's greatest corn cob holders, or a variety of other free merchandise. Last year at the fair, we gave away 1,950 items of branded American Experiment free merchandise.
How cool is that? That's fantastic. No, I'm just saying, you guys are all over. You know, somebody finally gets lucky enough to work through American Experiment. I'm going to be the finance guy, and I'm going to find out. And I'm spending the week at the fair. It's just so eclectic, and your people are fantastic. I love it. And you got a magazine. I mean, go to AmericanExperiment.org, check it out. You'll see what I'm talking about. Other things that I really think we have to talk about. I'm going to read this. You're a lawyer, right? Am I right? Were you? Okay.
I was for 41 years, Al.
You might have heard of Section 4, or what is it? Wow, Alan. Article 4, Section 17. I don't like reading laws, but this is like the greatest, like the littlest law of all time. Laws to embrace only one subject. No law shall embrace more than one subject, which shall be expressed in the title. This was written in the 1800s, so knuckleheads like myself could understand what it means. Here's just me. It sounds to me like all bills should be one subject, and the header should tell you what that subject's all about. Doesn't seem more complicated than that. But for 30 or 40 years, both sides have been doing these omnibus bills, and that might have got taken down by the knees this week with a judge in, I think, in Minneapolis. Your thoughts on that Minnesota binary trigger law being pulled out of an omnibus bill?
So this is something we've seen happening over the years in Minnesota. It's been happening at the national level too. You know, they'll have that one bill 4,000 pages long, negotiated, you're written in the middle of the night,
Yep.
by lobbyists and Democratic Party leadership. No one has read it. No one knows what's in it.
Yeah.
And they'll bring it on for a vote, thousands of pages, take it or leave it. That is not the way it's supposed to work. And the people who wrote the Minnesota Constitution were very smart, and they realized that this could be a problem. And so in Minnesota, they said every bill has got to be a standalone bill on a single subject with a title that tells you what the subject is. Very simple. And so you vote on things one at a time. You don't put 20 things together and say take it or leave it. You vote on different subjects one at a time. Well, we've gotten away from that. So in the last session, they passed, I think with 100% DFL votes, an omnibus bill. I think they called it that, an omnibus bill. And they cobbled together 7 or 8 different bills on completely different topics and said, here it is, thumbs up or thumbs down, take it or leave it. And that clearly violated Minnesota's Constitution. So this has been going on for a while. This is not the first time, Al, but this is the first time that a judge, in response to a lawsuit here by the Gun Owners Caucus, has been willing to look at the law, look at the statute, and look at the Constitution and say, sorry, that's not what it says.
Yeah.
And so Judge Castro in the Ramsey County District Court ruled that this is unconstitutional, and they knocked out that trigger legislation that was, one small part of this omnibus bill. And he basically invited further lawsuits. He said, every aspect of this bill is going to fall on the same logic. And so watch for additional lawsuits to be brought in Ramsey County, probably put in front again of Judge Castro. And I think we're going to see other portions of this omnibus bill struck down, and that's going to be something that will need to be addressed then in the 2026 legislative session.
Well, how quickly can all those lawsuits get through him? Because I presume 80, 90, a 1,400-page bill. There's a lot of stuff in here. If you didn't like the way it went, it goes against your thoughts. Go here. This guy's probably going to knock it down. Why wouldn't it? And maybe you can tell me. Maybe it's a constitutional thing. Why can't one guy? Why can't the Al Travis world say, omnibus bills? I'm reading the law for the first time in my life, but I've read it. I understand it. You're doing it wrong. Can't I, in good standing, take this same case through this, get to the Supreme Court, and have it all knocked out instead of having 80 or 90 separate organizations go through the same process?
Well, it wouldn't be 80 or 90. It would be more like 7 or 8. And the answer, Al, is that it all has to do with standing. And that's a whole big legal topic, But as a citizen or as a taxpayer, in most circumstances, you don't have standing to just go in and challenge a law. You've got to be a person impacted by it.
So how does one bit, I get it, the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus is the one who hired Upper Midwest Law Center to go after this, and they won, if you will. They got theirs out. But doesn't that make the whole thing crumble?
Well, the logic means that the whole thing is going to crumble because it's not going to take years to do the next one. I mean, there are people right now, Al, I can tell you, who are scrambling around and preparing to bring a lawsuit with respect to other aspects of that omnibus bill. And once they get that lawsuit filed, it's been briefed, it's been argued. The judge has ruled that this omnibus bill is unconstitutional. So it's not going to be a real long process to get additional elements of it knocked out.
Your thoughts, the governor and the attorney general think they are hinted that they may take and appeal this. Right now, they have a 1,400-page bill. The gun thing came out, but the rest stands. Don't they run a huge risk if they appeal this? And the Minnesota Supreme Court looks at that like Al does and say, no brainer, you can't do it. That whole law blows up, the way they do business blows up. Does it make sense for them to go after this and change the way business is done?
Well, that's a good question. Let me say this first, though, Al. A court can only rule on the issue that is before it and the parties that are before it. Now, its ruling may have implications. Other people might read the decision and say, holy moly, these are all going to get knocked out. But the court technically is only going to be able to address the issue brought in that lawsuit by those parties. But you're not wrong. I mean, if they take this to the Court of Appeals and then they are able to get it into the Minnesota Supreme Court, and the Minnesota Supreme Court says, yeah, that omnibus bill, that violated the single law, single bill provision of Minnesota's Constitution. And so as soon as anybody wants to knock out any part of it,
Yeah.
that's looks like that's going to happen. That could very well be the result. Now, I think what Walz and Ellison are looking at is the fact that our Minnesota Supreme Court is all Democrat at this point.
No.
7 Democrats, no
No.
Republicans. And so I don't think there's any question about the fact that this bill is unconstitutional under the provision that you read, Al. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. But I think they may be hoping that a group of 7 Democrats will somehow come up with a way to save their bacon.
So on this, should it not? How does it change things? I think that this, if they get rid of this, it's up and down. Everything's about the same. One topic, one bill. There will be less hiding. Right now, I can vote against an omnibus bill because it had that one thing in there that I cannot stand, or I can vote for it and say, well, 90% of it is great, so don't blame me for the other. Won't we get more pure thoughts on who's voting for what?
Al, absolutely. What we're really talking about at the end of the day here is accountability. Legislators should be on the record voting for or against a particular bill, a particular law, not an index of 10 or 20 of them, because then you can go back to your constituents and say, yeah, I agree with you. That was a lousy idea, but I had to vote for it. Otherwise we wouldn't have had a budget or, whatever. Yeah. And so this is exactly what we're trying to address.
All right. We've got to go to break. We'll be back after this with more. John Hinderaker with the American Experiment.
Achieving your financial goals requires individual planning and a comprehensive approach. At Midwest Money Management, our mission is to provide you with the knowledge, tools, and confidence to feel comfortable financially today and secure about tomorrow. Learn more at MidwestMoneyManagement.com. That's MidwestMoneyManagement.com.
Securities offered through JW Cole Financial Inc., member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services offered through JW Cole Advisors Inc., Midwest Money Management, and JW Cole Financial Inc. and JW Cole Advisors Inc. are unaffiliated entities.
Think about it. Now that school's out for the summer, how are Minnesota students doing? Not very well. Minnesota ACT scores fell again last year and are the lowest they've been in 10 years. In fact, fewer than half of Minnesota students can either read or do math at grade level. Think about it. We used to brag about our schools. Now we're losing to states like Mississippi. Visit AmericanExperiment.org for more information. Think About It is brought to you by Center of the American Experiment, Minnesota's think tank.
Amongst friends, the Al Travis Show. Nothing but talk.
Now we've got him, John Hinderaker with American Experiment. John, you're out there. Your people are out there. I mean, obviously the fair going all over the state. Are people, in your opinion, getting to a point they can't take it anymore? The story yesterday out of Care 11 was the same folks with this Medicare housing deal, the biggest group. They went and checked in on them, and what do you know? Found a gal who had passed 3 weeks earlier, and they were still getting money for. So they dig a little bit deeper and find out this actual company was under investigation by the Department of Human Services for a year. And Care 11 could find 3 other examples of people getting checks after passing, making it 4, which makes it seem like maybe it wasn't a clerical error with somebody just putting the wrong date of death on it. How much more does Minnesotans got to take?
I don't know, Al. You tell me. I mean, the amount of fraud that goes on in Minnesota is unbelievable. The acting U.S. attorney has identified 5 or 6 frauds, including Feeding Our Future, which add up to over $1 billion. But there are more. And at the federal level, they're trying to get Medicaid spending under control, and the liberals are saying, oh, no, 50,000 people will die. And all they're trying to do, they're not cutting benefits whatsoever. All they're trying to do is clean up the rolls. So here in Minnesota, insurance companies get paid for having people on their Medicaid rosters. Sure. And so we know, and our policy fellows have shown that there are many, many people on whose behalf insurance companies are being paid here in Minnesota who, 1, are dead, 2, don't live in Minnesota, and 3, don't qualify for the program. And in many cases, one of the things we found is that the majority of the people who were added to Medicaid after COVID, that was one of the COVID things, expanding Medicaid rules, the majority of them never knew that they were eligible for Medicaid. They were on employer insurance or some other kind of insurance, had no idea. But all the while, some insurance company is getting paid to have them on their rolls as a Medicaid client. And so all they're trying to do at the federal level and also here in Minnesota is to clean up these lists and stop the fraud and stop the overpayments to insurance companies.
It doesn't seem that hard, but here's what it does. So now we're paying for dead folks. My father passed, 2 months ago. The Social Security finds out about it on a federal level, and we get a notice. Your dad passed. Feel sorry for you. You owe us some money. And I got to get this right, but he died the day his check showed up, and they pay in advance. So he owed the government 3 weeks or week, whatever it was. And they say, sorry about your death. Here's what's going to go on. And they don't take my mom's Social Security for all at one time. They did little payments, all set up. Federal government knew what happened, knew he died within days. The fact that we are paying for dead people seems to tell me that when that death certificate goes to wherever, we're not sharing it across all Minnesota platforms. Department of Human Services found out they died, take him off all this stuff. So that leads me now to believe that there might be dead people voting in this state because the Secretary of State doesn't want to give up the list. Why would you not want to get up the list? You say you do a great job with it. Share it. Maybe Trump will come out and say you're the greatest Secretary of State of all time. Or they're going to find there are dead people on the list.
Well, there was a lawsuit, not so much about dead people. Well, it could be about dead people, but about, when they send out the postcards. If somebody same day registers and doesn't have any evidence that he, is a citizen who lives in that precinct, they let him vote anyway. And then they send postcards to all those people, of whom there's a considerable number, and they keep track of whether the postcard comes back or not. The mailman may say, hey, no such person. And that gets reported to the Secretary of State's office. So I think it was the Minnesota Voters Alliance tried to get those records from Steve Simon, the Secretary of State, under our Data Practices Act. This should be public information, And he wouldn't give it up. Wouldn't give it up. Why do you suppose that is? Well, that case went all the way to the Minnesota Supreme Court, and the Minnesota Supreme Court ruled, no, the Secretary of State doesn't have to give up that information. So, there's obviously a lot of fishy stuff going on, and our state officials, don't want people to find out about it.
All right. We got to fly, my friend. I appreciate you. Good luck at the fair. I hope things go great. Have a good time at the state fair.
All right. You should stop by and see us, Al, Saturday.
8 to 5. Spin the wheel. Get some great prizes. Appreciate you, John.
Thanks, Al.
John Hinderaker, American Experiment.
Think about it. A famous politician once said, "You're entitled to your opinion, but you are not